The FM dial, 1380 on the AM dial. And this show is for you, the consumer. We are in our 11th year, believe it or not. And I try to provide timely information about what's going on with the housing market, what's going on with buyers, sellers, and then also lenders and on the financial side of the industry. And you know, the market, and it's been very vibrant and strong, so it's been kind of more of the same the past few years, where it's continuing to increase. By that I mean equity accumulation has been increasing, which is great for homeowners, and it can be challenging for home buyers. Okay, especially you would think when interest rates are increasing or are higher than they have been, it could be a challenge for buyers. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today because interest rates have actually come down, but prices still appear to be increasing. So what does that mean for home buyers and home sellers? We'll talk a little bit more about that. I would like to do a shout out, thank our sponsors, of course. Vern Rainville, public insurance adjuster. Vern works for you, the property owner. He's licensed to be a public insurance adjuster. And the operative word there is public. He works for you. He's been helping homeowners out for many, many years. And he can actually even help you and go back as far as, in some cases, 2 years ago. So if you had a claim 2 years ago and you think you should have been paid more for it, give Vern a call, 484-300-8495. That's 484-300-8495. Vern Rainville, public insurance adjuster extraordinaire. And then, of course, G. Metz Moving and Storage. G. Metz Moving, the best move you'll ever make, the number one mover in southern New England. I refer all of my clients to them. Go to gmetzmoving.com if you would like to schedule a move or get a price on a move. It's G as in George, M as in Michael, E as in Edward, T as in Tom, Z as in Zebra, moving.com, and they will get back to you with a price for your move. And then, of course, closing in title company that we have had great luck with is Compass Title and Escrow, Anthony Betancourt and his crew. Very thorough, doing what they need to do to get everything done. They're good at anticipating potential surprises, potential speed bumps or potholes in the process, and they do that ahead of time, which is really nice so that way you don't have issues at the end right before closing. Okay, and they're not bashful about stepping up to represent our client, whether it's the buyer or the seller. They do what they need to do. That's Compass Title and Escrow, Anthony Betancourt and his crew over there. So last week we had as our guest Steve Tetzner from U.S. Bank. I've known Steve for a long time, many, many years. And, he has done more loans than I can count. And he's super knowledgeable because we're both kind of nerds or dorks in that we are always trying to learn more about the market, read up every day on what's going on. It's almost like, preparing for a radio show every day. That's, what we're both always doing. So I really enjoy talking with Steve. Sometimes we kibitz back and forth on Facebook or just text messaging, bouncing ideas off of each other. And, one of the things that he pointed out last week is, rates. These rates have been coming down. His bank, U.S. Bank, does have a lot of special programs for home buyers. And they now, since rates have come down, have a lot of programs that may help people to refinance. Okay? So, if you have any questions about anything regarding financing, you can give me a call, 401-409-5030. Or send me a text, 401-409-5030. Incidentally, I work at a company called Remax Preferred. I always forget to talk about me. I talk about everybody else. So I work at Remax Preferred. No one in the world sells more real estate than Remax. We are number one. And my office is the top office for all real estate offices for selling homes in Cumberland and in North Providence. That's Remax. Um, why do I work at Remax? We have a lot of great agents who work there. Why do I drive to the North Providence office instead of going to the Cumberland office? Because I grew up in North Providence, and a lot of my buddies who work there, it has a very familiar atmosphere, and it's very comfortable. So I, go there, and we have a good core of people. Some of us, we meet every week to bounce ideas off of each other, to make us better realtors, real estate agents for our clients. Okay, we share information, share challenges, ask for help, etc. And this helps us become better realtors. And that's important because that's better for our clients. Okay, but that's the type of thing that I do. Steve Tetzner, he's always working to try and make himself a better loan officer for his clients as well. And he has a lot of suggestions, to help people better position themselves so they can get a better rate or get a better loan program, et cetera. And he also does the same thing with realtors. He's not, bashful or timid about pointing things out that maybe the realtor didn't know about. So, one of the things that I take pride in is that I've got a great team of people that I work with. I have some awesome lenders that I work with. We're going to have some more great lenders on the show in the coming weeks. We're going to have Joe Baptista from Anchor Mortgage. We're going to have Dan Giroux from Semper Home Loans. So I'm going to continually bring lenders on the show so that you get different perspectives, and because they each have their own style, okay, and they each have their own forte. So that's one of the things that I try to do for you, my listeners. So interest rates have been going down, excuse me, and home prices have continued to increase. So this is one of those things that, is this good news? What does this mean? Okay. When prices go up, that can be a challenge for home buyers. It's good for home sellers, okay, but it could be a challenge for home buyers. And one of the things, that everybody's been talking about recently is that the home buyers, when rates come down, that will be better for them because they'll be able to better afford the home prices. But what's going to happen too is it's going to bring more buyers into the marketplace. And a lot of the talking heads say, well, Joe, that's okay because when interest rates go down, it's going to entice more homeowners to put their homes on the market. So inventory is going to increase. Yeah, maybe that's true, but I don't think it's going to do enough to help the market because I think we're going to have so many more buyers that come on the market or into the marketplace to buy homes that we're really not going to be able to make a notable dent in the inventory so that price increases don't continue. Okay, so it's going to be interesting, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens when it does. But I want to talk a little bit about that because, the rates have gone down, and they're generally expected to continue to go down. If you look at remarks by Dr. Lawrence Yun, the chief economist for the National Association of Realtors, and he said rates have gone down, and they're probably going to continue to go down into the first and second quarter of 2024. So that's great, but people, some home buyers are like, well, you know what? I'm going to wait to see if rates come down and I'll buy a home then. Well, I spoke to some buyers a year ago, literally, who adopted that strategy. And back then, the median price of a single family home in the state of Rhode Island was about, I think it was $350,000. And a lot of these buyers were complaining, it's overpriced, prices are going to come down, rates are going to come down. What's happened? Well, yeah, rates did come down a little bit, but prices are 10 to 12% higher. So now you're spending $40,000, $50,000 more for a house to purchase the house. So even if you don't get, even if you do get, a lower interest rate, you're paying interest. That lower rate is being paid on a higher principal amount. Your purchase price is higher. All right. So we have this whole issue of what's going on in the economy and what are people doing on the micro level to make decisions about their own finances, and do they want to risk it and try and wait it out to see if the market drops or if interest rates drop. Well, folks, interest rates, they were in the 7s and 8s not that long ago, and that's when we realized equity accumulation rates of 10 to 12% year over year. So if that happened when interest rates were in the 7s and 8s, what's going to happen when interest rates are in the 6s and 7s, or maybe 5s and 6s? There are going to be a lot more buyers chasing a very sticky amount of inventory. Okay. Well, Joe, how do you know that sellers aren't going to put their houses on the market when interest rates drop? Well, there were a lot of people, they have rates from in the high 2s and low 3s, mid 3s, high 3s. It would take a lot for them to have to sell that house and then get another mortgage that's 2 or 3 points higher. But there are some people who purchase their house and they have rates that are 4, 5, little over 5. Those are the folks who could be enticed to sell their home because the home doesn't work for them anymore. The family is growing. So it may make sense for them to take the jump and buy a home. And if they own a home already, sell their existing home. So that will put some inventory on the market. But anecdotally, folks, when rates go down, there are going to be so many more people who now qualify, who were bounced out of the market before when rates increased. And a year has passed, so there are going to be new buyers who are now in a situation where they need homes or need to upgrade. So that's putting more demand on this limited supply that we have. So I really don't see the rate of equity accumulation stagnating or decreasing. Now, that's in a perfect situation. When you start to factor other things in, for example, today, October 1st, there is now a strike. I think it's about 45,000 dock workers are on strike up and down the East Coast and into the Gulf Coast. And this is impacting, I believe the number I heard, $5 billion a day. That's the impact to the economy. And for every day that there's a strike, it's going to take more than a week to recover. And of course, this will impact food. This will impact furniture. This will impact clothing. Maybe it will impact fuel. It will impact cars. All of these things come in on ships. Remember a few years ago when we had COVID and there were all of those freighters, all of those, those barges with the container ships, and the containers were stacked up high, and they could not come into the port. In particular on the West Coast. I don't know if it was the East Coast too. I remember the West Coast. And you had all of these container ships just sitting out in the ocean waiting. That's going to continue to happen if this strike doesn't get fixed, doesn't get straightened out, doesn't get resolved, or the president doesn't step in and declare a national emergency and force them to go back to work. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that the stuff that's coming here from Europe is either not going to be able to get here, or they're going to have to fly it in, or they're going to have to ship it all the way around so it comes in on the West Coast. What is that going to do to the price of all of these goods that people spend money on? It's going to increase the price significantly. We're already experiencing inflation to the tune of 20+%. So how big are these increases going to be? How protracted, how long is this strike going to go on? That could adversely impact the demand from buyers, okay? Because if buyers, they've got to spend so much more money on fuel and food and clothing for the kids and everything else, they may not be able to continue to put money aside or pay down the credit card so they qualify for the mortgage. And that could throw a monkey wrench into the entire housing economy. And, you know, housing drives the entire economy. So if we can't get the goods in, so all of those goods are experiencing significant rates of inflation, and then the housing economy is adversely impacted, that's really going to put a tailspin on everything, because now if houses aren't being sold, and we already have fewer sales because there are fewer homes to be purchased, so, you know, appraisers aren't making as much money, realtors aren't making as much money, contractors, there aren't as many homes being sold, so in the aggregate, contractors are making less money, but there is also more work for a lot of individual contractors. So if you have a contractor with a good network, they're very busy. You know, they're busier than, as we used to say in the old days, a one-armed paper hanger. For those of you who don't know, it was back in the day, there were people that all they did was hang wallpaper. So those folks are very busy. Those contractors who have a good network, referral network of people. So this is a monkey wrench that could really be a challenge for the housing economy. That's number one. Number two, what else happened today, October 1st, a big day, is missiles started flying in the Middle East. So Iran launched all of these ballistic missiles. I saw numbers from 100 to 200 to 500 in one day into Israel. Now, that in and of itself may not affect our economy. However, we have, a couple of carrier groups over there. We have a lot of our military over there. What if we get brought into this, if we get dragged into this conflict? How is that going to impact things? We're also sending $8 billion, an additional $8 billion to the Ukraine. And we just had a hurricane tear up the southeastern part of this country. And I've heard estimates of as much as $150 billion of damage and hundreds of lives lost. So that's going to be impactful on our economy. Okay, maybe there are all the those facilities that make whatever they make, and all the farmers down there, all the agriculture. That's all adversely impacted from this hurricane. So we have some very significant issues that we're going to have to deal with, not us individually, but our economy, our nation is going to have to deal with in the coming months. Now, some of these could be addressed, and the whole situation could be mitigated if some politicians took steps to do so. I think President Trump was down south. He started a GoFundMe page. He brought water and all those things down there to folks in Georgia. I think if the president or the vice president went down there, that would be very significant. And I saw a quote today, and I don't know if this is misinformation or not, that said that the president said there's no more aid going to these states. I find that hard to believe. We need to get these states up and running as quickly as possible. We have entire downtown areas that are literally underwater. Imagine, your car, how you go back and forth to work is underwater. So now you can't get to your job, even if your job is still available. Think about these things on a personal level and then kind of go up to 10,000 feet and look at it from that perspective, and what the macroeconomic implications are from this hurricane, and the poor execution of rescues and just emergency management procedures. That could be a real challenge for our economy. I mean, I know the housing economy in those 5 states of Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and I believe parts of Kentucky, they're going to have some significant issues with their housing market. Okay? I mean, I know a friend of mine in Georgia, 13 of her employees' homes were just wiped out. Imagine that. So this is going to be a significant challenge for the economy, and it will impact home sales, but how will it impact home sales? Is it going to prompt them to slow down because we don't have enough buyers now? Are we going to be insulated from that here in the Northeast? Because we didn't experience it, so everybody's still going to work, and we can still benefit or capitalize on the lower interest rates. It remains to be seen. It remains to be seen. And then again, so we've got the whole situation in the Middle East. What is the likelihood that we are going to get drawn into that conflict? And then if we are drawn into that conflict, does that have any impact on our economy? I don't know. What could happen is if we get drawn into that conflict is and I heard this on one of the podcasts I listened to, terrorist cells are activated in this country. And so now all of a sudden we have to deal with terrorism like they do in the Middle East. And there are thousands upon thousands of terrorists in this country that just walked in across the southern border. Those are the ones we know about, but we don't know where they are. That could be problematic for our economy if bombs start going off in bus stations, train stations, schools, God forbid, metropolitan areas, urban areas. So that's something else that's a big question mark. Is it going to happen? Are we going to get drawn into that conflict? 2, if we are drawn in, are there going to be terrorist cells activated? And then, if so, how do these issues impact the purchase and sales of homes in southern New England? I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know. I would tend to think that if there are terrorist, events happening across the country, I think that would give a lot of people reason to say, you know what, let's wait before we buy a house or put our house on the market. I don't know. People like things to be stable and predictable. And whenever anything indicates that we're not experiencing that right now. That has an adverse impact on retail sales and then on housing sales, because so much of our economy is psychological. Our economy is strong because everyone believes it's strong. But if there's enough out there, enough negative headlines, and enough unforeseen events occurring, that may make people feel a little bit nervous. So that's item number 2. Item number 3, the war in the Ukraine. We're sending another $8 billion over there. And I'll tell you what, I don't think we're sending a fraction of that to all of these folks that were wiped out by this hurricane. So sending that $8 billion to the Ukraine, is that going to adversely impact home sales or purchases? I don't think so, not directly, because we've been doing that. We've already sent over $100 billion there, and home sales chugged right along. People kept buying homes. But I think what that is going to do is, when they're printing this money to send overseas, when the government prints money, that creates inflation. So that's going to be problematic too, because it's going to bring inflation back. We're just, starting to get out from under this, this beast of inflation. And now it looks like it's going to be coming back, especially so you've got between the strike at the ports up and down the eastern Gulf coasts, and then printing money and sending it to the Ukraine. That could be problematic. So, you're a home buyer, you're a home seller. What do? You keep doing what you do. If you need to get a new home, a bigger home, you need to buy your first home, stay steady. Remain focused on your goal. Continue to educate yourself and engage in a transaction that makes sense for you and your family. When I bought my home in 2018, it was a foreclosed property, and we bought that, and it seemed like a lot of money, especially because it needed $100,000 of work. But that house is worth a lot more than what I paid for it. That was a big step. Okay. But I'm happy. I'm glad that we made that step. We took on that commitment. And if you make a decision, a financial decision that makes sense, dollars and cents, pluses and minuses, you do not overextend yourself, you have stable employment, by all means, continue to, push forth to achieve your objective of becoming a homeowner for the first time, or of buying a new home, a bigger or smaller home, whatever you need. Because long-term, folks, even if these calamities occur, they're just speed bumps in the road. So maybe values would be impacted a little bit in the short term, maybe. But within a couple of years, things are going to turn around and the values are going to go back up again higher than they were before. Look, if you look at where housing was before the crash, the price of homes in 2004, 5, 6, 7, things were getting run up really high. Then we had the crash. We had no home buyers, and everybody was upside down and either had to sell a foreclosed home or a short sale. And you had that period of 3, 4, 5 years where prices were declining, bottomed out, And then in 13, 14, 15, things continued to increase in value. I think it was by 17, we had already reached the point that we were at before the crash. And then after that, 18, 19, 20, property values continued to increase. And then COVID, again, who would have thought that home prices and home sales would have been as strong as they were when we were on a literal lockdown in this country. So let's say worst case scenario. Well, the strike is happening. The hurricane happened. We're sending the $8 billion to the Ukraine. And the only maybe is, are we going to get drawn into this war in the Middle East? That being said, it still makes sense to proceed with your home purchase or home sales objectives. Now, selling a home, if you have to, the reason people have to sell a home is job transfer, you're getting a divorce, death, moving into a nursing home, like life transitions like that. Those are the reasons you, air quotes, you're required to sell a home in most instances. If you don't have to sell your home, okay, you can sit on it and values will continue in the long term to go up. But if you have some time constraints and you're like, jeepers, Joe, I don't know, how if prices go down, I don't have much longer I can stay here or I can afford it or whatever. Maybe I need to sell the house now to maximize my return. Well, again, I don't have a crystal ball, but if you have, a finite, like there's a window by which you need to sell your home to retire or whatever your next step is, wouldn't be a bad time to do it, because even if you bought your home as little as 2 years ago, you're probably sitting on 20% equity, which isn't a bad thing because you didn't pay cash for your house. And even if you did, you'd be getting a 20% return on your house. But if you put 5% down, 10% down, and you have 20% equity on the entire purchase price, but you only put a small deposit down, you have a very significant return on your investment. Okay. Folks, you're listening to the Joe Luca Real Estate Show right here on WNRI 99.9 FM, 1380 on the AM dial. We are here every Tuesday evening from 6:05 to 7 p.m. You can also check us out on Facebook and on the Joe Luca Cup of Joe Luca, as well as YouTube. And this week we are on LinkedIn as well as a live transmission. This show is also uploaded to Spotify as a podcast about an hour after we get off the air, and we are rebroadcast every Saturday afternoon at 1 p.m. Now, folks, you can listen to this show. If you want to listen to it online, just go to WNRI.com and you can listen to it for free. Some of the apps that are out there, even if you're a member, you have to listen to, it seems like 10 minutes of commercials before you get to the show. Go to WNRI.com, you log in, you start listening right away. No other commercials other than our sponsors, okay? And of course, we urge you to support our sponsors for the Joe Luca Real Estate Show, Compass Title and Escrow, G-Mets Moving and Storage, as well as Vern Rainville Public Insurance Adjuster, licensed by the state of Rhode Island. Vern's number is 484-300-8495. That's 484-300-8495. So, yes, we have a lot of headwinds that we're going to be dealing with over the next days, weeks, maybe months, I don't know. And then, 30, 35 days from now, we have the election. So presumably the election will happen, and then hopefully within a day of election day, we will know who the next president is going to be. I'm in favor of anyone who is going to promote growth and support small businesses, and not make it more difficult for people to buy a home, own a home, or sell a home. We do not want the government getting involved in disrupting our private property ownership rights. That's something we have to make sure that we retain. So even on your local level, in your municipality, city or town council, don't be bashful. Go and ask them, how do you feel about private property ownership rights? Are you going to protect them, Mr. or Mrs. Candidate, Mr. or Mrs. Politician? Because defending private property ownership rights is number one, maybe after freedom of speech. So maybe the First Amendment is number one. Private property ownership rights is right up there, along with the Second Amendment as well, because these are the things that distinguish us from other nations on the planet and make us the shining city on the hill that we have been for so long, and why we are a destination for so many people from so far away. That's why people come here. Of course, we like people to come here legally, like my ancestors did, my great-grandparents. A lot of my friends' parents and grandparents, even today, and friends of mine today. Young folks in their, 30s, 40s, 50s, who came here when they were in their teens and 20s to make a better life for themselves. We do not want to tarnish or reduce the chance that someone can make a better life for themselves in this country. That's why defending freedom of speech, Second Amendment, and private property ownership rights, those are three biggies. Because there are other countries in the world where you don't have any of those, or all three of those are severely restricted. And we don't want that. In some European countries, people are getting arrested because of things that they post on social media. People were arrested during COVID in Minnesota for things that they said about COVID. We need to defend freedom of speech. We do not like it when people say certain things, but the Constitution grants people the right to say those things. Well, I'm offended if someone insults me. Well, that's a decision that I make to be offended, or to be insulted. Someone can say something mean about me and I can ignore it, because what that says to me is that that's an ignorant person. An insult has to be accepted. If someone insults you and you ignore it, doesn't make any difference. If someone says mean things, air quotes, about a group of people and one individual is offended by that, well, they should unoffend themselves. I have to say, the older I get, the more I respect and appreciate a lot of people out there who, speak truth to power, and a lot of these comedians. And the thing is, I may not even agree with these people, with their positions, either politically or culturally or otherwise, but I love the fact that they are speaking truth to power, that they are saying things to make people think. And they should be allowed that because it's allowed to do that because it's protected by the First Amendment of the Constitution, whether it's Dave Chappelle, Jerry Seinfeld, any of these comedians. Okay? They can say things to get a laugh. There are comedians out there who I don't agree with politically or socially. They make jokes about things that I believe in. I laugh. I don't get offended. It's funny. You just have to roll with it. Folks, believe it or not, you are listening to the Joe Luca Real Estate Show, even though I just went off on a little bit of a tangent about the First Amendment, freedom of speech, the Second Amendment, right to bear arms, and the private property ownership rights, which we all need to fight for, make sure we retain. Because these are the things that distinguish us from every other country in the world. Okay. You know, we have one of the highest home ownership rates in the world, in this country. And if you look at segments of the population, for example, the Hispanic population, they have been increasing their home ownership every year. 47% of all homes purchased since COVID have been purchased by Hispanic buyers. Think about that. 47%. Not all demographic groups have experienced that, but Hispanics have. We need to make the economy a little bit more friendly to other demographic groups so that they can also increase their rate of home ownership. You know, I'm on the DEI committee for the Rhode Island Association of Realtors. And you may say, Joe, why are you on a DEI committee for real estate? Well, the reason I am is because, you know, housing is something that is, we all need a home. We all should be able to purchase any home that we are qualified to buy, that we want to buy. Unfortunately, there are still many instances where folks who don't look like me, white Caucasian, have challenges buying a home. And it's not just on a personal level. Sometimes it's on, you know, it is on a larger level, okay? And it's not pervasive, but even if there's, you know, just a few instances of this happening, we need to educate people so that it doesn't happen, because everybody should be able to purchase a home that they're qualified to purchase, that they want to purchase, and that a home that's where they want to live. And that's something I will defend, and I will support anyone that wants to do that as well. And that's why I'm involved with the DEI committee for the Rhode Island Association of Realtors, because I don't want to see anyone. And I have friends whose parents had problems when they were buying a home 30 years ago, 20 years ago. And my family, we never experienced that. My immediate family, I know 100 years ago, 90 years ago, 80 years ago, when my family was trying to settle in certain areas, they experienced a lot of discrimination, a lot of boorish behavior, if I could say that. We should not do that in the 21st century. So this is why I try to do this, basically because not all home buyers look like me, but they should all have the same opportunity to buy a home that I have, that you're qualified to buy. I am not in favor of making special exceptions for people to buy homes that they are not qualified to buy, just so they can become a homeowner. That was one of the problems we had back in the early 2000s when we had the ninja loans, no income, no job, no assets. Nothing needed to be verified. That came down from the federal government, from the president, President Clinton. I forget which year it was, in the 1990s. It was essentially, if someone comes in and asks for a loan, you shouldn't deny them. Well, you know, whenever the federal government injects themselves into the private sector, they make a mess of it. They make a mess of it. And they did that back then, and that was one of the major contributing factors to the great real estate crash. Because all these people who were buying these homes, and they were all kinds of crazy financial instruments. So you could buy a home that you didn't have to document that you were qualified to buy financially, and then you didn't have to make payments, or you only made interest payments for the first 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But then in the 5th year, now all of a sudden your payment goes from $900 a month to $2,500 a month. You can't afford to make those payments because you were barely making the payments you made before because you made up a number so that you'd qualify for that loan. So we need to keep the federal government and the state government and municipal government out of the private sector because they don't know how to run a business. Businesses exist for one reason and one reason only, to make a profit. The government never has to make a profit. If the government needs more money to match, so if they're spending more money, then, oh wait, we need more money, they just increase taxes. You know, imagine if you went to your boss and said, you know what, boss, this month I spent $5,000 extra, I need a $5,000 raise. It's not going to happen in the private sector. So we need to make sure the government does not inject themselves into the private sector. And that's why private property ownership rights are very important. We don't want to see transfer taxes on, on properties that sellers have to pay. We want to keep property taxes in line. We don't want to see crazy insurance rates. Now, the government shouldn't tell insurance companies what rates to set, but they also shouldn't make it difficult for them to operate at a profit. Okay? You know, the government just does not know how to run a business. They don't produce anything. They collect taxes and they pay salaries. That's all they do. And they send money overseas. So essentially, they collect money from the populace, use some of it to pay all of their bills, and then some they redirect to causes, air quotes, causes, that they feel are appropriate, needed. And we've all heard those stories of, $1 million being spent to study, goldfish or some little plankton. That's great research, but if it's truly great research, there should be a private company that would be willing to fund it. Because if there's no private company that's willing to fund it, maybe it's not worthwhile. Maybe it's not viable yet. But when the government is just writing checks with no accountability, wow, that's awesome. How many of you guys listening or watching online would like to be able to work some days, not work some other days, but collect as much money as you need to collect? That's what the government does. And we have a chance now, locally, at the state level, we have to wait a couple more years. Nationally, locally and nationally, in about a month, we have a chance to make a statement to keep our political representatives honest, so they are accountable to us. Don't be shy about asking them difficult questions, calling their office, letting them know how you feel about an issue. Not just abortion, not just Second Amendment rights, all of these issues. Because folks, they like it when you get all ginned up over those two issues, and everybody's worked up into a lather on those two issues, but you don't see anything else that they're doing. when they pass these bills that you have to pass it before you can read it. That's nonsense. Imagine if you said that to a teacher in school. Well, here's my paper. And the teacher was like, well, okay, I'm going to read it, and then I'll give you your grade. No, you have to give me the grade first, then you're going to be able to read it. Well, that makes absolutely no sense. Our politicians need to be held accountable, because they have so much control over so many different things that impact us on a daily basis, but we don't see the connection. So folks, please pay attention. I've been saying this for years. Get involved. Become engaged in the political process. Pay attention. So many of us, we disengage because the news is negative, and yeah, I kind of get it. The news can be negative. It can be a little overwhelming. But folks, you need to read up. Figure out what the ballot initiatives are this year in Rhode Island, so you know what you're voting for or against before you go to your polling place. Decide if you want to vote early. I believe it's after the 16th of October, you can go and vote early. Or if you want to vote in person on Election Day. But get out there and vote. Especially if you're voting for something to defend the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, private property ownership rights, because these are the things that make our country great. Okay, folks, you've been listening to the Joe Luca Real Estate Show. I'm Joe. I appreciate you for tuning in. We're here every Tuesday from 6:05 to 7 p.m. in WNRI 99.9 FM, 1380 AM. I want to thank Vern Rainville, Public Insurance Adjuster Extraordinaire, 484-300-8495. Vern Rainville, Public Insurance Adjuster who works for you, not the insurance company. G Metz Moving and Storage. Check them out at gmetzmoving.com, gmetzmoving.com. You can schedule a move or get a quote on a move at their website. And Compass Title and Escrow. Anthony Betancourt and his crew do a great job taking care of our buyers and sellers of residential and commercial real estate. So next up, Rick Marinier and the Old Time Preaching Ministry. He is coming up. We're going to give you some good scripture readings and lessons and interpretations. So please stay tuned for that. I will be back next week, same bat time, same bat channel. So please tune in, and I look forward to seeing you and hearing from you. 401-409-5030 if you have any questions. Take care, guys. Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Bye-bye.